The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was neutral ground where different alien races could meet without fear of war. Today, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered in the Great Council chamber for what they thought would be a simple meeting about trade routes and expansion rights. Ambassador Choi So walked through the curved corridors of the station, her black diplomatic uniform crisp and professional. She had spent months preparing for this moment. Earth had finally developed faster than light travel, and humanity was ready to take its place among the stars. Behind her walked Dr. Lee Na, a xenobiologist whose job was to study and understand alien cultures. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking area. Each section was designed for different alien species with their various needs for atmosphere, gravity, and lighting. Choi So took her place in the human section, a small area near the back that had been hastily added for this meeting. She looked around at the other delegates. The Thalan Confederation representatives were beings of pure energy who glowed with soft blue light inside their containment suits. The Corvin Hive sent 3 speakers who moved in perfect unison, their thoughts connected across vast distances. Ancient mechanical beings from the Eternal Court sat motionless, their optical sensors recording everything. But it was the Vrex Empire delegation that dominated the chamber. They were insectoid creatures, each standing over 2 meters tall, with forearms ending in razor-sharp claws. Their exoskeletons were black and shiny, covered in ritual scars that showed their battle history. At their head sat War Prime Thekvor, the most feared warrior in known space. The meeting began with routine matters. Trade agreements were discussed. Border disputes were settled. New mining rights were allocated. Choi So waited patiently for her turn to speak. When the session moderator finally called on the human delegation, she stood and walked to the central speaking area. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "I am Ambassador Choi So, of the United Earth Government. Humanity requests membership in the Galactic Council." A ripple of interest passed through the assembly. Most species took decades or centuries to work up the courage to request membership. Humans had achieved faster than light travel only 5 years ago. War Prime Thekvor rose from his seat, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of dominance. These soft creatures dare to request a place among warriors and conquerors. His voice was like gravel scraping against metal, even through the translation system. They have no honor scars. Their homeworld knows nothing of the deep hunt or the blood paths of true combat. Other delegates shifted nervously. The Vrex had a tradition that went back 3,000 years. Any species wanting to join the council had to prove their worth in ritual combat against the galaxy's apex predators. 14 civilizations had tried. None had survived. Choi So remained calm. She had studied Vrex culture extensively and knew this moment would come. "War Prime Thekvor, we are aware of your traditions. We understand that membership in this council must be earned through demonstration of worthiness. Then you understand that you must face the trials." Thekvor clicked his mandibles together, a sound that conveyed both amusement and contempt. 6 challenges that will test every aspect of your pathetic species. Combat, technology, survival, tactics, hunting, and strategic thinking. Dr. Lee Na watched the other delegates carefully, taking notes on their reactions. The Corvin Hive speakers were emitting high-frequency distress signals. The Eternal Court's probability calculators were working overtime, their mechanical forms humming with increased processing power. Even the ancient Thalan energy beings seemed to dim with concern. "We accept your challenge," Choi So said simply. The chamber fell completely silent. In 3 millennia, no species had ever accepted the Vrex challenge willingly. Most spent years negotiating for alternative arrangements, offering tribute or resource rights instead of risking extinction. Thekvor's compound eyes focused on the human ambassador with new interest. "You accept? Do you understand what this means, soft creature? The trials are not games. They are tests of absolute worthiness. Failure means death for your champions and eternal shame for your species." "We understand perfectly," Choi So replied. When do we begin? One galactic standard month from today, Thekvor announced. You will select your champions. We will prepare the trials. The first test will be single combat, where your greatest warrior will face me in personal battle. A Thalan energy being spoke up, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Young humans, why do you rush toward extinction? The Vreks have defeated every challenger. Mighty civilizations that ruled star systems have been reduced to client states or eliminated entirely. Choiso turned to address the Thalan delegate directly. Honored Prime Consciousness, perhaps it is time the galaxy learned what humans call the underdog advantage. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Most delegates had never heard the term before, and their translation systems struggled with the concept. Dr. Li Na stood and added, in human culture, we have many stories about the small defeating the large, the weak overcoming the strong. We do not see size or natural weapons as the only measures of strength. War Prime Thekvor let out a harsh laughing sound. Philosophy and stories will not save you when you face Vrek steel, but your courage is noted, even if it is the courage of the ignorant. He began outlining the specific parameters of each trial. Single combat with traditional weapons, technology development under pressure using only raw materials, survival in hostile environment without equipment, fleet tactical engagement, the sacred deep hunt in the Shadowlands, strategic conquest, simulation. As he spoke, other delegates approached the human section with mixtures of sympathy and curiosity. A Corvan speaker whispered, your species shows interesting neural patterns. We calculate a 0.003% survival probability, yet you show no fear responses. Fear can be useful, Dr. Li Na replied quietly, but it should not control your decisions. The session concluded with formal documentation of the challenge acceptance. As delegates began filing out, many stopped to offer condolences or express admiration for human bravery, though most seemed convinced they were witnessing the last official act of a soon-to-be-extinct species. Captain Han Wu appeared via hologram from the human exploration vessel Indomitable, which was orbiting the station. His weathered face showed no emotion as he received the details of what they had committed to. Ambassador, are you certain about this course of action? He asked. Captain, we knew this was likely when we decided to seek membership. Better to face the challenge now on our own terms than to spend decades trying to avoid it. Very well. I will begin preparations immediately. We have 1 month to get ready for something no human has ever faced. As the humans left the council, Chamber War Prime, Thekvor watched them go. Subprime Katara approached him, her scarred carapace showing her own long history of battles. War Prime, these creatures puzzle me. They show no signs of the desperate bravado we usually see from doomed challengers. They accepted as if they had expected this. Thekvor considered this. Perhaps they are simply too ignorant to understand their fate. Or perhaps... He paused, his predator instincts detecting something he could not quite identify. Perhaps they know something we do not. Back in their assigned quarters, the human delegation gathered for an emergency planning session. Captain Han Wu's hologram flickered as the Indomitable's communication array struggled with the distance. I have been reviewing everything we know about previous challenges, Han Wu reported. The Vrek's fighting style is based on overwhelming physical superiority and traditional tactics that have worked for them for thousands of years. Which means they have never had to adapt or evolve their methods, Dr. Li Na added. They expect their opponents to fight like they do, or like previous challengers have fought. Choiso nodded. The question is, can we give them something they have never seen before? Ma'am, Han Wu said, I have been in combat for 20 years. I have learned that the most dangerous opponent is not the one with the biggest gun or the strongest armor. It is the one who fights in ways you never expected. Then that is what we will do, Choiso decided. We will not try to beat the Vreks at their own game. We will change the game entirely. The meeting continued deep into the station's night cycle, as they began planning humanity's first real test among the stars. None of them knew if their species would survive the next month, but they were determined to show the galaxy that humans deserved respect, even in defeat. Outside the station's viewports, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that the balance of power in the galaxy was about to shift in ways no one could predict. The Indomitable cut through space at maximum speed, rushing back to human-controlled territory. Captain Han Wu stood on the bridge watching the stars streak past, his mind already working on the impossible problem they faced. Behind him, his crew moved with quiet efficiency, each person understanding that the next few weeks would determine whether humanity survived as a free species. In the ship's main briefing room, holographic displays showed everything they knew about Vrek's combat methods. Dr. Li Na studied psychological profiles while Engineer Park Jin examined captured alien technology. Pilot Kim Do sat at the back, his young face serious as he watched footage of Vrek's fleet engagements. Their individual warriors are incredibly strong, Dr. Li Na reported to the assembled officers. Average Vrek soldiers can lift 3 times their body weight, which is already twice human mass. Their natural armor can stop most small arms fire, and their reflexes are about 40% faster than ours. What about their technology? Han Wu asked. Engineer Park Jin activated another display. Superior to ours in raw power output, but also predictable, they have been using the same basic weapon and ship designs for over 1,000 years. Why change what works when you always win? Because eventually you meet someone who does not fight the way you expect, Kim Do said quietly from the back of the room. Han Wu nodded. Exactly. Lieutenant Kim, what do you see in their fleet tactics? The young pilot stood and walked to the display controls. Sir, they fight like they are still on the ground. Big ships in the center, smaller ships protecting. The flanks, everything focused on overwhelming firepower and direct confrontation. He paused the footage at a key moment. But space is not ground. In space there is no up or down, no solid footing, no fixed positions. Go on, Han Wu encouraged. They expect their enemies to either run away or charge straight at them. What, if we did neither? Dr. Li Na looked up from her psychological profiles. The Vrek's mind literally cannot process the concept of strategic retreat. In their culture, any withdrawal is permanent defeat and dishonor. They would rather die than step backward, which means they cannot understand an enemy who retreats in order to attack from a better position, Park Jin added, beginning to see the pattern. Han Wu smiled grimly. Admiral Kang Su is sending us everything Earth can spare, 12 ships, including some experimental designs that have never been tested in real combat. We will have one chance to show the galaxy that humans fight differently. 3 days later, that chance came sooner than expected. The human supply convoy was moving through the Kepler Junction, a busy trade route that connected several major systems. Captain Han Wu had positioned the Indomitable and 2 escort destroyers to guard the supply ships carrying equipment and personnel for the coming trials. Lieutenant Kim Do was leading a patrol of 6 experimental fighters, small craft that Earth Command had designed for reconnaissance and fast strikes. He was checking the convoy's outer perimeter when his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. Captain, he reported over the comm, I have 4 large ships approaching fast. Configuration matches Vrek's heavy cruisers. On the Indomitables, Bridge Han Wu watched the tactical display update. 4 Vrek's warships against his small escort force. In any normal engagement, the humans would be completely outmatched. This is Subprime Katara of the Vrek's 3rd battle group, came a transmission from the lead alien ship. We come to observe human combat capability before the formal trials begin. Do not attempt to flee. Stand and fight with whatever honor your soft species possesses. Han Wu opened a channel to all human ships. All vessels, this is not a formal trial, which means we can use any tactics we choose. Kim Do, are your fighters ready to try something new? Yes, sir, came the immediate reply. Permission to execute Plan Chaos? Granted. All ships, support the fighters as needed, but let them take the lead. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The Vrek ships approached in their traditional formation, expecting the humans to either scatter in panic or group together for a defensive stand. Instead, Kim Do's fighters did something no alien pilot had ever seen. They began using their own convoy ships as cover. darting between the larger vessels and using them as shields. When the Vrex fired their massive plasma cannons, the shots, meant for the fighters, instead struck empty space or glanced off the convoy ship's reinforced hulls. But that was only the beginning. Kim Do had studied the asteroid field that bordered the Kepler junction, and he knew exactly how the gravitational forces worked. His fighters launched their missiles not at the Vrex ships directly, but at specific asteroids positioned throughout the field. The missiles struck the asteroids and bounced off, their guidance systems recalculating trajectories in real time. To the Vrex gunners, it looked like the weapons were malfunctioning, flying in random directions. They had no way of knowing that each missile was following a carefully planned path, using asteroid gravity and rotation to reach targets from completely unexpected angles. Engineer Park Jin had made one more modification to the fighters that the Vrex could not have anticipated. Each ship carried a small swarm of maintenance drones, normally used for external repairs. But these drones had been reprogrammed to act as decoys, broadcasting false sensor signatures that made it appear as if there were dozens of human fighters instead of just 6. The Vrex found themselves shooting at ghosts while real threats approached from directions their tactical computers insisted were impossible. Subprime Ketara watched her display screens in growing confusion as her gunners reported hit after hit on human fighters, only to have the targets reappear moments later in completely different locations. "These readings make no sense," her tactical officer reported. "The human fighters appear to be teleporting." Impossible. No species has that technology. But the evidence was right in front of them. Human missiles were striking Vrex ships from angles that violated everything they knew about space combat. Fighter craft were appearing and disappearing faster than tracking systems could follow. The convoy ships themselves seemed to be moving in coordinated patterns that turned them from helpless targets into mobile shields and tactical platforms. The engagement lasted exactly 7 minutes and 32 seconds. When the sensor ghosts finally cleared, 3 Vrex heavy cruisers were drifting powerless, their weapon systems destroyed, and their engines offline. The 4th ship was broadcasting surrender codes, something that had never happened in Vrex military history. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed, though 2 fighters had taken minor damage and 1 convoy ship needed hull repairs. Subprime Katara stared at her tactical displays in absolute silence. Her communications officer waited for orders, but she had no idea what to say. In 3,000 years of Vrex expansion, no enemy had ever defeated them through pure tactical innovation. "Subprime," her tactical officer said hesitantly. "Should we signal for reinforcements?" "No," she replied slowly. "Signal Nexus Prime. Tell War Prime Thekfor that the humans fight like no species we have ever encountered." On the Indomitable, Captain Han Wu watched the Vrex ships retreat. Kim Do's fighters reformed around the convoy, their pilots cheering over the comm channels. "Outstanding work, Lieutenant," Han Wu said. "How do you feel about our chances in the formal trials?" "Sir, if they fight the trials the same way they fight regular engagements, I think we might actually surprise them." Dr. Li Na was already analyzing recordings of Vrex communications during the battle. "Captain, this is interesting. Their language patterns show genuine confusion, not just tactical surprise. They literally do not have words for some of the maneuvers we used." "What does that mean for us?" "It means we really are fighting an enemy that has never had to adapt. They have won so often and for so long that they have forgotten how to learn new tactics." Engineer Park Jin was reviewing the technical performance of their experimental systems. Everything worked better than expected. The drone decoys confused their targeting systems completely, and the asteroid bounce trajectories were perfect. Han Wu nodded, but his expression remained serious. "This was just a patrol group. The formal trials will be much harder, but we have proven something important today." "What is that, sir?" "We have proven that human tactics can work against Vrex technology. Now we need to prove that human courage can work against Vrex warriors." The news of the engagement reached Nexus Prime within hours. War Prime Thekfor reviewed the tactical recording 7 times, his compound eyes studying every detail. Subprime Ketara stood before him, her scarred carapace showing the shame of her defeat. "These humans display cunning beyond what we expected," Thekfor finally said. But cunning without strength is merely delaying death. When the formal trials begin, they will face me personally. We shall see if their tricks work when they cannot run and hide. But across the galaxy, other species were watching the same recordings with very different reactions. The Thalan Confederation sent encrypted messages to their fleet commanders, asking for analysis of human tactical methods. The Corvin Hive updated their probability calculations for human survival, raising the estimate from 0.003% to 2.7%. Most importantly, species that had been forced into submission by the Vrex began to hope for. The transport ships descended through the thick atmosphere of Karak 7, a dead world that the Vrex had used as their proving ground for 2,000 years. Captain Han Wu looked out at the scarred landscape below, seeing the twisted remains of alien cities and the broken hulks of ships from species that had failed the trials. Massive viewing platforms had been constructed around the main trial areas, filled with representatives from dozens of galactic civilizations. They had come to witness what most believed would be humanity's final moments as a free species. War Prime. Thek-4 stood at the center of the combat arena, a circular space 1 kilometer across made of hardened volcanic glass. His forearms held traditional Vrex war blades that gleamed in the harsh sunlight. Around his massive frame, ceremonial armor displayed the kill marks of 100 battles. "Where is your champion, humans?" His voice boomed across the arena. "Send forth your greatest warrior so we may begin this ancient ritual." Captain Han Wu walked onto the arena floor, carrying only a standard plasma rifle and wearing basic military fatigues. The alien observers stirred with confusion. They had expected powered armor, ceremonial weapons, and the kind of dramatic display that usually preceded these combats. "Human," Thek-4 growled. "Where is your honor armor? Your ritual weapons? Do you mock the sacred ways with this plain appearance?" Han Wu stopped 20 meters from the towering alien warrior. When he spoke, his words came out in perfect Vrex dialect, something that shocked every observer, including Thek-4 himself. "War Prime," Han Wu said calmly. "On my world, we have a saying. The best armor is not being where your enemy expects you to be." Thek-4's compound eyes focused intently on the human. "You speak our tongue. This shows respect, even if your equipment shows weakness." "Very well, small warrior. Let us see what courage lies within that soft flesh." The ritual combat began at the sound of an ancient Vrex war horn. Thek-4 charged immediately, his 4 war blades spinning in patterns perfected over millennia. Each blade was capable of cutting through ship hulls, and his speed was incredible for such a large creature. But Han Wu was not where the charge was aimed. The human captain moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually based on mathematical chaos theory. Every time Thek-4 thought he had cornered his opponent, Han Wu was somewhere else entirely, landing precise shots from his plasma rifle. The shots did not target Thek-4's armored chest or protected limbs. Instead, Han Wu aimed for joint connections, sensor clusters, and the small gaps in natural armor that Vrex warriors never bothered to guard, because no enemy had ever been precise enough to exploit them. For 23 minutes, the greatest Vrex warrior in history chased a human who fought like no opponent he had ever faced. Han Wu did not try to match strength with strength or speed with speed. Instead, he turned the fight into a puzzle that Vrex combat instincts could not solve. When it ended, War Prime Thek-4 found himself on one knee, his war blades scattered across the arena and his armor systems failing. He was not dead, but he was completely defeated for the first time in his long life. "How?" he asked through his translator, genuine confusion replacing his usual arrogance. Han Wu walked over and offered his hand to help the fallen warrior stand, a gesture that left every alien observer speechless. "War Prime, your people learned to fight by conquering others who fought like you. Humans learned to fight by surviving on a world where everything wanted to kill us, including the weather, the plants, and invisible diseases." The second trial began immediately after medical teams cleared the arena. Each species had to design and build a weapon system in 6 hours, using only raw materials available on Karak 7. The other participants constructed various energy weapons and siege engines based on their traditional designs. Engineer Park Jin built something that did not look like a weapon at all. His creation was a network of small devices scattered across the testing range. They appeared harmless, almost like communication equipment. When the demonstration phase began, the other weapons performed exactly as expected, destroying their targets with impressive displays of raw power. Park Jin's devices did not fire any projectiles or emit any energy beams. Instead, they began broadcasting a very specific frequency that resonated with the molecular structure of Carrick 7's volcanic glass surface. Within minutes, the entire testing range became a massive amplifier. The broadcast frequency grew stronger and stronger until it was powerful enough to shatter Vrek's armor at the molecular level. Rocks cracked, metal twisted, and the demonstration targets simply fell apart. "You turned the entire planet into a weapon," whispered the Corvin Hive speaker, its voice filled with something between admiration and terror. Park Jin nodded respectfully. "Honorable speaker, humans do not just adapt to environments. We make environments adapt to us." In the observation platforms, alien delegates leaned forward to get better views of these impossible humans. Subprime Katara watched the recordings of both trials with growing unease. "They do not fight like any species we have encountered," she reported to War Prime Thekvor, who was still recovering from his defeat. "Their tactics make no sense according to any military doctrine in our databases." Thekvor flexed his healing limbs slowly. "Perhaps that is exactly why they work, Subprime. We have become so accustomed to victory that we forgot enemies might find new ways to fight." The alien observers buzzed with excited communication. For the first time in galactic history, challengers had not just survived the opening trials but had won them decisively. Species that had been crushed by Vreks might begin sending secret messages to each other, wondering if perhaps the galaxy's balance of power was about to change. Dr. Li Na studied the crowd reactions from her position in the human viewing area. "Captain," she said quietly to Han Wu, "look at how the other species are behaving. They are not just watching us anymore. They are hoping we succeed." "That could be dangerous for them if we fail," Han Wu replied. "Yes, but it also means we are fighting for more than just humanity now. We are fighting for everyone who has ever been told they were too weak to matter." Ambassador Choi so joined them as the arena was prepared for the next day's trials. "How are you feeling about our chances?" Han Wu considered the question carefully. "Ambassador, I think we have already won something important regardless of how the remaining trials go." "What is that?" "We have proven that the Vreks can be defeated. That knowledge alone will change the galaxy, even if we do not survive to see it." But as the alien delegates filed out of the viewing platforms and returned to their quarters, many were already making plans based on a very different assumption. They were beginning to believe that humanity might actually complete all 6 trials successfully. If that happened, everything in the galaxy would change. War Prime. Thekvor stood alone in the empty arena long after the crowds had gone, staring at the scorch marks from human weapons and the scattered fragments of his war blades. For 3,000 years he had been the ultimate predator, the final test that determined which species were worthy of survival. Today, a soft creature from a distant world had taught him something he had never imagined possible. Sometimes the strongest fighter was not the one with the sharpest claws or the thickest armor. Sometimes the strongest fighter was the one who could make you forget everything you thought you knew about fighting. The remaining trials would test different aspects of human capability. But Thekvor now understood that he was not just facing another species seeking membership in the galactic community. He was facing something entirely new. The third trial took place in Carrick 7's most dangerous region, a deep canyon system where the planet's magnetic fields created censored dead zones. Representatives from each challenging species would be dropped into this hostile environment with no equipment and had to survive for 72 hours. Dr. Li Na volunteered for this trial, a decision that caused surprised clicking and chittering from the Vreks observers. Subprime Katara made several dismissive comments about human weakness and poor species organization. "They send a female scientist to face the survival trial," she announced to the other Vreks officers. "Clearly they have no understanding of what true survival requires." What the Vrex did not know was that Dr. Lee Na had spent her childhood in the mountains of Korea with her grandfather, learning traditional survival skills that had been passed down for generations. More importantly, she had studied the ecology, reports from every world humanity had surveyed. The contestants were dropped at sunrise into different sections of the canyon system. The environment was brutal, with temperature swings from freezing cold to desert heat, predatory creatures that had evolved in isolation, and toxic plants that could kill with a single touch. Within the first hour, Dr. Lee Na had identified which local plants were safe to eat, which ones could be used for medicine, and which could be woven into rope and shelter materials. She did not fight the canyon's dangerous wildlife. Instead, she used her understanding of animal behavior to avoid them entirely, or when necessary, to redirect their hunting patterns away from her location. The other contestants struggled to find basic shelter and water sources. The Vrex representative, a battle-scarred warrior named Groktar, used brute force to claim territory and hunt the local predators for food. It was an effective strategy, but it required constant fighting and consumed enormous amounts of energy. By the end of the first day, while other species representatives were still searching for safe places to rest, Dr. Lee Na had established a comfortable base camp. She had constructed a waterproof shelter, identified multiple food sources, created a water purification system using local minerals, and even built a small workshop where she crafted tools from canyon materials. The surveillance drones showed her singing quietly to herself while she worked, occasionally stopping to make detailed notes about the local ecosystem in a journal she had made from plant fibers and mineral deposits. "She is treating this like a research expedition," reported Vrex tactical analyst Grevthok. "No," Subprime Ketara said slowly, watching the surveillance footage with growing unease. "She is treating it like home." On the second day, Dr. Lee Na made a discovery that changed everything. She found ancient cave paintings created by a species that had lived on Karak 7 millions of years ago. The paintings showed the locations of natural caves, underground water sources, and seasonal migration patterns of the local wildlife. Using this information, she moved her base camp to a position that gave her access to everything she needed, while keeping her completely hidden from both predators and the surveillance systems monitoring the trial. When the 72 hours ended, Dr. Lee Na emerged from the canyon system healthier than when she had entered. She had gained weight from eating nutritious local plants. Her equipment was better than what most species brought to survival situations, and she carried detailed maps of the entire canyon system. "How is this possible?" Grektar demanded when he saw her condition. The Vrex warrior had survived, but barely. His armor was damaged. He had lost significant body mass, and several wounds from predator attacks were still healing. "The canyon is not an enemy to be fought," Dr. Lee Na explained, patiently. "It is a system to be understood. Once you understand how it works, it provides everything you need." The fourth trial was fleet engagement tactics, and Admiral Kang Su arrived from Earth with a modest human task force. 12 ships ranging from destroyers to a single heavy cruiser faced off against the standard Vrex Challenge fleet of 47 vessels, including 3 massive dreadnoughts that outweighed the entire human force combined. The battle took place in Karak System's asteroid belt, a region the Vrex had used for naval demonstrations for centuries. They knew every gravitational anomaly and tactical advantage the terrain offered. Admiral Kang Su's strategy became apparent within minutes of the engagement beginning. The human ships did not fight as individual vessels competing for personal glory, as Vrex tradition demanded. Instead, they operated as a single coordinated organism, each ship fulfilling a specific role in a larger pattern. The Vrex expected their opponents to either cluster together defensively or spread out to avoid concentrated fire. The humans did neither. Instead, they moved in complex 3-dimensional formations that used the asteroid field itself as both weapon and shield. Human ships coordinated their movements using quantum-encrypted communications that updated faster than Vrex response times. They used asteroids not just as cover, but as weapons, calculating precise gravitational maneuvers that sent massive rocks hurtling into Vrex formations at devastating speeds. Most shocking to Vrex observers, The humans employed tactical retreat as an offensive weapon. They would engage Vrex ships just long enough to draw them into disadvantageous positions, then withdraw to new locations where they could bring overwhelming local superiority to bear against isolated enemies. "They fight without honor," complained Vrex Fleet Commander Haxtor, as he watched his superior numbers being systematically defeated by an enemy that refused to stand and fight properly. "No," Admiral Kang Su replied over the open communication channel, speaking in careful Vrex dialect. "We fight to win." When the engagement ended, 31 Vrex vessels were disabled or destroyed. The human fleet had lost 2 destroyers and sustained moderate damage to several other ships, but they remained an effective fighting force. More importantly, they had demonstrated something that no species in galactic history had ever shown. They had proven that coordination and tactical innovation could defeat raw superiority in numbers and individual ship power. Subprime Ket Ara watched the tactical recordings in stunned silence. "They fight like a pack," she finally said. "But there is no single leader giving all the commands. They are all leaders, all followers, all thinking together." War Prime Thekfor, still recovering from his personal combat defeat, studied the fleet engagement data with the attention of a professional warrior. "Subprime, I begin to understand what we face. These humans do not fight like any single creature. They fight like something new." "What do you mean, War Prime?" "They have made themselves into something greater than the sum of their individual parts. Each human is weak compared to a Vrex warrior, but together they become something we have no experience fighting." In the observation platforms, delegates from across the galaxy watched the recordings with growing excitement. The Thalan Confederation sent encrypted messages to their own fleet commanders, requesting immediate analysis of human tactical methods. The Corvin Hive updated their survival probability calculations for humanity, raising the estimate from 2.7% to 23%. Even the ancient Eternal Court began running new strategic simulations based on human behavioral patterns. But it was the reaction of the smaller, weaker species that mattered most. Civilizations that had been forced into client relationships, with the Vrex began holding secret meetings, discussing what might be possible if humanity actually completed all 6 trials successfully. For the first time in thousands of years, species throughout the galaxy began to believe that perhaps strength was not the only path to survival among the stars. The final 2 trials still lay ahead, and both would test aspects of humanity that even they were not sure they could master. But they had already accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They had made the Vrex doubt themselves. The 5th trial was the most sacred to Vrex culture, something they called the Deep Hunt. It tested not only tracking and survival skills, but also spiritual worthiness according to their ancient traditions. The contestant had to venture alone, into the Shadowlands, a region where Carrick 7's magnetic field created sensor dead zones and strange energy phenomena. The objective was simple in concept, but nearly impossible in execution. Somewhere in the 1,000-square-kilometer maze of canyons and cave systems, a specific artifact had been hidden. Previous challengers had taken weeks to complete this trial, if they survived at all. Pilot Kim Do volunteered for this challenge, despite protests from his senior officers. At 25, he was the youngest member of the human delegation, but his experience flying solo reconnaissance missions in uncharted systems had taught him to trust his instincts when technology failed. The Vrex escort brought him to the edge of the Shadowlands at dawn. The landscape looked like something from a nightmare, with twisted rock formations that seemed to move when viewed from the corner of the eye, and shadows that fell in directions that defied the position of the sun. War Prime Thekfor, still healing from his combat trial defeat but honor-bound to oversee all challenges, offered Kim Do a traditional blessing and a ceremonial hunting weapon. Kim Do accepted both respectfully, then asked a question that made the gathered Vrex pause in confusion. "War Prime, in your culture, what is the difference between hunting and being hunted?" Thekfor considered this carefully. "The hunter chooses the time and place of engagement. The hunted can only react to what the hunter decides." "Thank you for that wisdom," Kim Do said. and disappeared into the Shadowlands before the Vrex could understand the implications of his question. What followed would be discussed in xenopsychology courses for generations to come. Kim Do did not search for the hidden artifact using traditional tracking methods that the Vrex expected. He did not follow animal trails, look for disturbed ground, or try to deduce the hiding place through logical elimination of possibilities. Instead, he used uniquely human cognitive abilities that no other known species possessed. He began by studying the Shadowlands not as a place to be searched, but as a puzzle to be solved. The Vrex would not hide the artifact in the most dangerous location, because that would make the trial about survival rather than hunting skill. They would not hide it in the most difficult-to-reach place because that would test climbing ability rather than tracking wisdom. They would hide it somewhere that required understanding Vrex psychology and culture. The artifact would not be hidden from view so much as hidden in plain sight, in a location that only someone who thought like a Vrex hunter would choose. But Kim Do did not think like a Vrex hunter. He thought like a human who had studied Vrex hunters. He could predict how their logic would differ from human logic, then work backward from those differences to find patterns they would not even realize they were following. After 6 hours of systematic exploration, he found the artifact in a cave that overlooked the entire Shadowlands region. It was exactly where a Vrex hunter would place something important, in a position of dominance and visual command over the surrounding territory. But the real test came as he prepared to leave the cave with his prize. A sound like wind through broken glass echoed from the depths of the cavern system. Kim Do turned to see something that had killed dozens of previous trial participants approaching from the darkness. The Vrex called it a void stalker, a creature that seemed to be made of living shadow and possessed the ability to change its shape at will. It was considered the ultimate test of a warrior's courage, an enemy that could become anything and strike from any direction. Previous challengers had tried to fight it with weapons or outrun it through the maze of canyons. All had failed. Kim Do did something that no previous challenger had ever attempted. He tried to communicate with it. Using a combination of body language, vocal tones, and simple tool manipulation, he began trying to establish that he was not competing with the creature for territory or resources. He was not a threat to be eliminated or a rival to be dominated. He was just a traveler passing through. The Void Stalker paused in its approach, its form shifting between different predatory shapes, as if confused by this unprecedented response. For several tense minutes, human and alien creature studied each other across the cave floor. Then, incredibly, the Void Stalker stepped aside. Kim Do walked past the galaxy's most feared predator, nodded respectfully as he would to any dangerous animal he encountered in the wild, and continued out of the cave system with the trial artifact. When he emerged from the Shadowlands 17 hours after entering, the Vrex observers reacted with stunned silence. Not only had he found the artifact in record time, but he had survived an encounter with a Void Stalker without fighting or fleeing. "You made peace with death itself," Subprime Katara whispered, her voice filled with something between awe and incomprehension. Kim Do's response would become legendary throughout the galaxy. "Ma'am, on Earth we have a saying. It is not about being the strongest predator. It is about being the predator that all the other predators decide to leave alone." Warprime Thekvor studied the surveillance recordings of the encounter with growing fascination. "Subprime, this human did something I have never seen in 3,000 years of warfare." "What is that, Warprime?" He turned the most dangerous trial into a diplomatic negotiation. The implications of Kim Do's success rippled through the gathered alien observers like shockwaves. If humans could make peaceful contact with something as alien and hostile as a Void Stalker, what did that say about their potential as galactic neighbors? Dr. Li Na was already analyzing the communication techniques Kim Do had used, taking notes that would revolutionize xenopsychology. "Captain," she reported to Han Wu, "what Lieutenant Kim accomplished suggests that human empathy and pattern recognition abilities may be our greatest advantages in dealing with alien species." "How so?" "We are apparently better at recognizing intelligence and finding common ground with completely alien minds than any other species in the galaxy. That could be more valuable than any weapon." Ambassador Choi. So watched the recordings, with growing excitement. Dr. Lee, if we can demonstrate that ability in the final trial, we might do more than just gain membership in the Galactic Council. What do you mean? We might change what the Galactic Council represents entirely. As news of the Deep Hunt results spread throughout Nexus Prime and beyond, species across the galaxy began reassessing their assumptions about humanity. The Thalen Confederation sent formal requests for cultural exchange programs. The Corvin Hive expressed interest in studying human neural patterns. Even the mysterious Eternal Court began calculating new probability matrices for galactic political development. But it was the reaction of the smaller, conquered species that mattered. Most secret communications networks that had been dormant for centuries suddenly came alive with encrypted messages. For the first time since the Virex had established their dominance, subjugated civilizations began to hope that perhaps there was an alternative to rule through fear and strength. The final trial remained, and it would test humanity's ability to think on a galactic scale. But regardless of the outcome, Kim Do's peaceful encounter with the Void Stalker had already demonstrated something that would reshape diplomatic relationships throughout known space. Humans possessed the ability to find common ground with any intelligence, no matter how alien or seemingly hostile. In a galaxy full of different species trying to coexist, that might be the most valuable skill of all. The sixth and final trial was the most complex challenge the Vrex had ever designed. It was a strategic simulation that tested the ability to think on a galactic scale, requiring participants to design a campaign for conquering an artificial galaxy populated by multiple hostile civilizations. The simulation contained hundreds of star systems, dozens of different species with varying technologies and cultures, and limited resources that had to be carefully managed. Previous challengers had spent days creating detailed military campaigns with battle plans, logistics networks, and conquest timelines. Ambassador Choi So took her position at the Central Command Console as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to observe. The simulation chamber was a sphere 50 meters in diameter, filled with holographic displays that showed the artificial galaxy in perfect detail. War Prime Thekfor announced the trial parameters. You have 48 hours to design and execute a campaign that will bring at least 60% of this galaxy under your control. You may use any methods you deem appropriate, but you must demonstrate clear dominance over the simulated civilizations. Choi So studied the displays showing the various simulated species. Some were warrior cultures like the Vrex. Others were peaceful traders, scientific researchers, or isolationist societies that wanted to be left alone. Each had different strengths, weaknesses, and cultural values. War Prime, she said carefully. May I clarify the victory conditions? Must these civilizations be conquered through military force, or would voluntary alliance count as control? Thekfor's compound eyes focused on her intently. The method matters not, only the result. If you can make them serve your purposes, that is sufficient. What happened next would be studied in diplomatic academies for centuries. Instead of designing a conquest campaign, Ambassador Choi So created something that no previous challenger had ever attempted. She designed a diplomatic revolution. Her strategy did not focus on defeating the simulated civilizations through superior military technology or tactical brilliance. Instead, she analyzed their social structures, economic needs, cultural values, and historical conflicts with each other. Then she began offering them something that none of the other trial participants had ever considered: mutual benefit instead of subjugation. To the warrior cultures, she offered military protection and honorable alliance against their traditional enemies. To the trading civilizations, she proposed economic partnerships that would increase their profits while providing resources her coalition needed. To the scientific species, she offered shared research projects and access to technologies from multiple sources. Most importantly, she approached the isolationist societies with respect for their desire to remain independent, offering them guarantees of territorial integrity in exchange for simply not opposing her coalition. The simulation's artificial intelligence, programmed to respond like real civilizations might, began generating responses that the Virex had never seen in previous trials. Simulated species started requesting negotiations instead of mobilizing for war. Economic partnerships developed rapidly. Technology sharing agreements emerged that benefited all participants. "This is not conquest," Subprime Katara protested as she watched the displays. "She is not defeating enemies. She is creating friends." Ambassador Choi So looked up from her console. "Subprime, perhaps that is because we learned long ago that the strongest empires are not built on the bones of the conquered. They are built on the prosperity of the willing." As the simulation progressed, Choi So's diplomatic strategy proved more effective than any military campaign in the trial's history. Species that had been programmed to fight each other began working together instead. Trade routes opened that connected distant systems. Research networks developed that accelerated technological advancement for everyone involved. Within 36 hours, her voluntary coalition controlled 73% of the simulated galaxy, not through conquest, but through willing cooperation. The artificial civilizations competed with each other to join her alliance, seeing the clear benefits of membership. War Prime. Thekvor watched the results with growing amazement. In 3,000 years of trials, no challenger had ever achieved such complete success, and certainly not through methods that left the conquered populations happy about their new status. "How is this possible?" Fleet Commander Haxtor asked as he studied the simulation data. "She has created an empire larger than anything we have built, and she did it without fighting a single major battle." Thekvor was quiet for several long minutes, studying the displays that showed peaceful trade convoys moving between systems that had been at war with each other when the simulation began. Finally, he made a decision that shocked every observer in the chamber. He formally surrendered the trials, not because humanity had failed, but because they had succeeded too completely. "For 3,000 years, he announced to the assembled delegates, the Vrex have maintained galactic order through strength. We defeated all who challenged us, and the galaxy remained stable through fear of our power." He turned to face Ambassador Choi So directly. "But stability through fear is not the same as peace through understanding. These humans have shown us something we had forgotten." "What is that, War Prime?" asked the Thalen Prime consciousness. "That the purpose of strength is not to dominate others, but to protect them. They are indeed the galaxy's most lethal creatures, but their deadliness comes not from their weapons or their tactics." He paused, looking around at representatives from dozens of species who had gathered to witness humanity's expected destruction. "Their deadliness comes from their ability to turn enemies into friends, competitors into collaborators, and fear into hope." The vote to admit humanity to the Galactic Council was unanimous, but that was only the beginning of the changes Ambassador Choi So's strategy would create. Within months, the principles she had demonstrated in the simulation began spreading throughout the real galaxy. Conflicts that had lasted centuries were resolved through negotiation. Species that had never communicated began sharing technology and culture. The Vrex, rather than being diminished by their defeat, found themselves with a new purpose. Their military prowess became the foundation of a galactic peacekeeping force that protected the new alliances humanity had helped create. Dr. Li Na's studies of alien psychology revolutionized how species understood each other. Engineer Park Jin's innovations in adaptive technology helped dozens of civilizations solve problems they had struggled with for generations. Pilot Kim Do became an instructor, teaching alien pilots that creativity and empathy could be more effective than raw aggression. Admiral Kang Su restructured fleet operations throughout the galaxy, showing how cooperation could achieve more than competition. Captain Han Wu, in his final report to Earth Command, wrote something that would be quoted in history books for generations: "Mission accomplished. Humanity has been accepted into the Galactic Council. But more than that, we have changed what it means to be part of the galactic community. We came to prove that humans deserved a place among the stars. Instead, we helped the stars discover that they deserved better than what they had." 1 year later, the Galactic Council chambers had been completely redesigned. The rigid hierarchy that had dominated galactic politics for millennia was replaced by a circular arrangement where all species met as equals. Ambassador Choi So, now serving as the first elected speaker for the reformed Galactic Council, addressed The assembly during the anniversary celebration of humanity's trials. "Honorable colleagues," she said, "we gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in the greatest adventure our galaxy has ever undertaken, learning to live together not despite our differences but because of them." In the observation gallery, War Prime Thekfor sat beside Subprime Katara, watching the peaceful proceedings with satisfaction. The scars on his carapace had healed completely, but he wore them with new pride, not as marks of dominance but as reminders of the day he learned there were better ways to be strong. "Truly," he said to his second in command, "these humans were the most lethal creatures in the galaxy. They killed our loneliness, our fear, and our isolation. They showed us that we did not have to face the universe alone. The galaxy would never be the same." And for the first time in millions of years of cosmic history, that was exactly what it needed. Humanity had not just survived their trials. They had transformed the very meaning of survival itself, showing that the strongest species were not those who dominated others, but those who lifted everyone up together. Among the infinite stars, that lesson would echo for generations to come.